Hey, today I want to talk about one of my favorite directors just because it's fun. And you know, recently I did that video where I talked about my favorite directors. And so today, obviously, you've already read the title, I'm going to be ranking the Edgar Wright movies. And there aren't that many, so this probably won't be the longest video ever. But just you wait, just you watch. I'm probably going to end up talking about this for fucking 40 minutes. I'll try not to though. Something else to consider is that he does have quite a few shorts on his IMDb. There's a couple like hour long or 40-minute long shorts. And there's this other movie here called The Fistful of Fingers, which is basically feature length. It's like an hour 20 or something like that. But to be frank, I haven't seen those movies and they, for some reason, don't really count. Like people don't really consider those to be his feature films. Maybe they didn't get released in cinemas or something. There's not many reviews on them. I don't know where you're gonna find those movies in particular. And so just to take this into consideration, I'm not taking those movies into consideration. They don't count. I'm just counting his like famous feature films. Those are the ones I've seen. That's what I want to talk about. Okay, so that's what we're doing. Let's go. Alright, so number 5 is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Okay, this is going to be an unpopular opinion time, blah, 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 unpopular opinion time. I don't like Scott Pilgrim versus the World. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm saying right now. I know it's very popular. I know you watching probably love it. I know. I'm an idiot, okay? I don't like the movie. That's all. No, but the thing about Scott Pilgrim versus the World is, even though I do think that it's probably Edgar Wright's worst movie, it's at least the one I like least. It's still a pretty good worst movie on a ranking list. You know what I mean? It's proof just how good Edgar Wright is. I think that there's a lot to love about this movie. I love the editing style. I love the quick pace to it. I love how it's like cartoony and video gamey and fun. I really love that aspect. I do though think that the humor doesn't quite always work for me. It feels very like clever. It feels very like hipstery. It feels kind of like, I don't know. It's like this particular side of pop culture that I don't really get. I don't know. There's just certain jokes in there that doesn't quite work with me. Like I don't really love all of the jokes and humor and stuff in this movie. I also am bothered by Scott Pilgrim just kind of being an asshole. Like, I don't like how he treats Knives, but he also probably shouldn't be going out with her anyway because she's too young. I don't know. It's kind of weird. And I just don't really like that whole plot. I don't care about who Scott Pilgrim decides to date. I just don't really, I'm not that invested. And although I really like the cartooniness and all that stuff of like the 7 X's and he has to fight him and all that stuff, it's just, I don't know. It just feels a bit too silly sometimes. I love the referential humor. I love when like there's that scene where the girl played by Aubrey Plaza, whatever the character's name is, swears and like there's a bleep over her face and he's like, how'd you do that? Like I like that kind of stuff. Like that's clever to me. And I really love Chris Evans in this movie. I think he's hilarious in this movie. I am quite a big fan of that. But a lot of it just feels a little bit too, I don't know. It feels like it's trying too hard to be clever. And I don't like Scott Pilgrim as a character, as a person. I don't really like any of the characters that much. I don't know. It's a movie that makes me feel dumb and slow and old. I don't love it. I don't love it. But I can see why people do. I love the editing. I love the style to it. I really love how this movie looks. And I do think that is definitely what Edgar Wright is best at when it comes to this movie especially. It's adding a personality in there like that. It's just that personality in this case didn't quite vibe with me. But from here on out, I absolutely love every single movie that I'm going to talk about. Okay, so next up is The World's End, which, yes, is lower on my list at number 4, but I think it's so underrated. This movie is so much better than I think it gets credit for, and it's actually quite impactful. It's a movie about growing up, but also like not wanting to grow up. You know, it's this guy stuck in his past and wanting to be young, and oh man, you know, I can connect with that. And I imagine that's only going to increase in the coming years. It also is very much about alcoholism and kind of having to rely on that and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's, you know, with that, it's a very personal film for Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg here. I think that this was very much in some ways autobiographical. Well, I think in some ways this movie was autobiographical. Obviously it's a very exaggerated version of that, but I think that like the characters in this ring very true. You know the people in this movie. They feel kind of more real. And then it gets a little more silly with the aliens and stuff. And I'll be honest, I like the first half more than the second half of this movie, but I do think that it has something to say. And I think that this is really underrated. I quite like The World's End a lot, and I think it gets a bad rap compared to the other two, which are objectively better, I would say. But I do think that this is a fantastic movie as well, and it doesn't quite get the appreciation that it deserves. Okay, next up, number 3 is Hot Fuzz. It pains me to put it at this position, to be honest, because I love Hot Fuzz. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, it's quite up there. Everything about it is so articulately written. Everything adds up. There's always a callback to something. There's always something pays off later on. They mention something now, that's gonna be a joke later. They do, you know, everything feels intentional and everything is just so perfect. It feels mathematical. It feels like it's put together like just in this way that just works. It's so functional, but it's also hilarious. It doesn't feel like it doesn't have a personality, like by any means. This doesn't feel like it's a movie that's just like trying to do one thing and it just does that and forgets about anything else. No, this remembers the details. This focuses on hilarious jokes, and it parodies the kind of crime movies and a bit of horror movies and stuff in there as well that we've seen before. And it's a commentary on the police, and it's a commentary on police films, and it's very interesting to watch the mystery kind of get solved and all that kind of stuff. It actually draws you into its story, like unironically. As funny as it is, this is also a very mature and very clever movie. Like this movie, as opposed to Scott Pilgrim that makes me feel kind of dumb, this movie makes me feel smart. I'll be honest, because like there's just something about it that is just so, it's so clever. I love, again, with Edgar Wright, I'd probably have to say this for every single film, but I love the editing, the quick pans to and from things, the like clever kind of ways that he frames stuff. There's that scene where I don't even remember the context, but I remember it being funny, where there's somebody with a cake and their hand is shaking and they're like off screen, but their arm is just coming into the frame with cake, and for some reason that's funny. I'm sure there's more context to it in the film. I don't remember at the moment. But yeah, no, this movie is hilarious and I like it. I like it a lot. And it's fucking brutal too sometimes. Like some of the violence in this movie is actually quite shocking. That thing with the fucking top of the church bit, just... yeah, wow. And for number 2, let's talk Baby Driver. Baby Driver is one of my favorite films of all time as well. I mean, pretty obvious to say, right? I absolutely love it. I think it's a really cool kind of homage to like older kind of films and that kind of thing. It really nails the vibe that it's going for. You can really tell that there's a lot of passion behind there with the music, with the editing, of course, with the visuals and all that kind of stuff. And Baby himself is one of my favorite characters, maybe in general. He's just so pleasant to kind of be around. Like you love to see him kind of like dance around and stuff, be this just cool guy. You wish you could be as cool as this guy. But then there's some actual depth to him as well, you know, like there's some interesting stuff to him and his kind of moral status. Like he wants to be a good guy, but he's kind of pushed into doing this bad thing and he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's one of those kinds of situations, and I really love going on this kind of really fun adventure, this journey with him. But it's also like, it's kind of sad, like you learn what happened in his past and all that kind of stuff. And it's a very interesting movie in terms of all of its cartoony characters and all that kind of stuff. And I do think that this is probably the movie with Edgar Wright's best editing. Like if you want an example of what good movie editing is, it's Baby Driver, with all the stuff that goes to the beat of like whatever song is playing and all that kind of stuff. There's something just rhythmic to it. Everything feels intentional and everything is there for a reason. And Edgar Wright here is also proving that he's capable of like directing action. He's capable of doing some bigger things. Like he'd done that before, of course, with with all of the movies that I mentioned before. I don't know, everything about Baby Driver blows me away. I love it. And number one is, obviously, you already know what it is. It's the one that still remains that I haven't said. Shaun of the Dead is a childhood favorite of mine. Maybe it shouldn't be, I don't know. I watched it when I was probably 10 or something for the first time, and my god, Shaun of the Dead is just, it gets more relatable with each year. It gets funnier with each year. You realize more things, jokes that you missed and all this kind of stuff. And it's just such a classic. There's just something about it that is so comforting in a way. Like, it's it's kind of a subgenre horror movie, The characters are in peril and some bad stuff happens and it can get quite sad, quite violent, quite, bad things happen in this movie, but there's something about it that is just, it's so comforting. Like I said, it's kind of like a warm blanket movie, you know what I mean? You can watch this like just on any day, really. Like, I can watch this on any day and it kind of will just make me feel better. I'll just smile at everything, and it's the movie that I know most well in his filmography as well, not just because it's the oldest one. I mean, I've watched it the most times, but just because just something about it feels so memorable. Like, I can quote things as they happen. I can kind of watch it in my head if I really think about it, maybe, like I can think about what events happen here and there. And I mean, there's just something about it that feels like it's just, this is the one that gets quoted the most, I feel like. This is the one that gets referenced the most. This is the best. And I don't know. That's all I have to say. So yeah, Edgar Wright, he's awesome. I love him. His editing is so good and he is clever. He's a clever man. I like him. So that's all. I just wanted to count down some of his movies, talk about him for a bit. And guess what? That's what you've just witnessed. I did it. It's done. It's over. So do the things, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And thanks for watching. Bye.